Praise ye Yahweh, sing unto Yahweh. So praising Yahweh, singing to him, right? A new song. And his praise in the congregation of saints, the Israelites. Let Israel rejoice in him that made him. Let the children of the remembered ones, to Zion one, be joyful in their king. Let them praise his name, Yahweh, and the dance. Let them sing. See, praise and sings in the same sentence. Sing praises unto him with the timbrel and the harp. For Yahweh taketh pleasure in his people, the Israelites. He will beautify the meek, we the meek, with salvation. He's going to save us, the elect. Salvation means to be saved from impending danger, right? Delivered from impending danger. Let the saints be joyful in glory. Let them sing or praise. Let them sing aloud upon thy beds. We're going to be getting up in the morning.
Psalm 149. Praise ye the Lord. Sing unto the Lord a new song, and his praise in the congregation of saints. Let Israel rejoice in him that made him. Let the children of Zion be joyful in their king. Let them praise his name in the dance. Let them sing praises unto him with the timbrel and harp. The Lord taketh pleasure in his people. He will beautify the meek with salvation. Let the saints be joyful in glory. Let them sing aloud upon their beds. Let the high praises of God be in their mouth, and a two-edged sword in their hand, to execute vengeance upon the heathen, and punishments upon the people, to bind their kings with chains and their nobles with fetters of iron, to execute upon them the judgment written. This honor have all his saints. Praise ye the Lord.
The elect are coming. The gods of the earth are coming.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Kakodash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to us younger brothers. And peace and blessing, salutations to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds. In the name of Yahweh Bashim Al Shai, pushing to get up out there. Shalom to the hopeful lake, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashim Al Shai. All right. And what I want to go into today, dealing with the enemy of righteousness. Okay, because as we understand, when you go into the scriptures, all right, there's two main characters, okay, that are centered, that are the center of prophecy. They're at the center of the narratives of the scriptures. And there's Jacob and Esau, all right? And the birth of these two sons in the earth, would be, a rivalry that will play out, even until this very second, this very day, okay, as we find ourselves in captivity, all right, into the nation of Edom. Now, let's get a few precepts. And I got a video I want to go into, but just to lay the foundation of this video. So when you go here, all right, to the book of Genesis, the 27th chapter, okay, dealing with the blessing that was given to Jacob, then there was a blessing given to Esau. Now at the end of Isaac blessing Esau, because Jacob's blessing was eternal. Esau's blessing was temporal, okay, and Jacob got everything. okay, including Esau himself. Okay, so when you go here to Genesis 27 and 41, okay, and we have to understand, all right, this mindset is still upon Esau Edom. It's never changed. Genesis 27 and 41 said from that time on, Esau hated Jacob because their father had given Jacob the blessing. And Esau began to scheme. I will soon be mourning my father's death. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. Okay. So this devil, all right, still has this mindset today. Even what we're seeing with this whole transhumanism and him trying to tap into immortality on the left hand side. That's him trying to get this blessing back that we're reading about in Genesis. Okay, and he still has that hatred for the people, all right, the descendants of Jacob. Okay, and this enmity goes all the way back to the garden. Okay, and we're gonna get, I got a few things pulled up on the chat, but let's go back to the garden. Okay, when the serpent deceived the woman, all right, and the woman deceived Adam. Okay, and the sons of God fell at this time. Okay, and there was a punishment, okay, for the serpent, for the woman, and for Adam. Okay, and when you go into, all right, Genesis 3 and 16, and it says, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman. He's talking now, all right, the angel is talking to, all right, the messenger of the Lord is talking to the serpent. Okay, and this is what he's telling the serpent: I will put enmity between thee, all right, the serpent, and the woman, which is the woman symbolic of Israel, and between thy seed and her seed, it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Okay, because it will be enmity between the nation of Edom and the nation of Israel. Okay, the sons of God and the sons of the wicked. Okay, this is the ongoing rivalry that has been happening since Genesis, man. Okay, and the devil right now we're dealing with the bruised heel, because as a nation we've been bruised. Okay, and bruised by who? Esau, the enemy. Okay, it tells you that in the book of Jeremiah. Okay, but at the end we're going to bruise his head. He's not going to recover from what Yahweh Shai is coming back to do to him. And said we're recovering as a people. The remnant, okay, is Israel being recovered. The remnant that has been raised up in these latter days. Okay, that's Israel being recovered. Okay, from the devil, bruising our heel as a people. Okay, so when you go here to the book of Jeremiah, the 30th chapter, okay, it speaks about their bruise. This is Jeremiah 30 and 12. It says, "For thus said the Lord Yahweh Bashem Al Shah, thy bruise is incurable and thy wound is grievous, man." All right, because 2/3, they're not meant to recover, from the bruise of the enemy, which is Esau Edom. This captivity, okay, was meant to destroy them. But for the remnant, all right, it was meant to chasten us to righteousness, man. Okay, Lord, will we of that number? It said, "There is none to plead thy cause, that thou mayest be bound up, that has no healing medicines," man. That's why nothing that our people do, it heals them, okay, from this spiritual wound, this spiritual bruise that they received in this time. Okay, money doesn't do it. All right, politics doesn't do it. Okay, being famous, you see, education in this system, nothing is healing our people. Only people that's being healed is the remnant that's in Yahushua. Okay, but this bruise, all right, that we read about in Genesis, where we're seeing this bruise play out now, to why people are just becoming more and more degenerate. Okay, it says, "All thy lovers have forgotten thee; they seek thee not." Everything that our people is into, man. All these other guys and religions, and our people just all over the place. Jake is Islam, Jake is Pan African, and Jake is all these different things, but nothing is healing our people. Okay, it said, "For I have wounded thee with the wound of an enemy, and that enemy is Esau Edom." Okay, It said, with the chastisement of a cruel one for the multitude of thy iniquity, because thy sins were increased. Why criest thou for affliction? Thy sorrow is incurable for the multitude of thine iniquity, because thy sins were increased. I have done these things unto thee. Okay, so the Lord allowed, our enemy Esau, Edom, to have his way with us, man. Okay, and 2/3 it was meant for them not to come back from it. Okay, they was going to be judged right along with Esau. Okay, and 2/3 they were going to have to come back born into the new covenant in the kingdom in their right mind. Okay, but just to show you that the rivalry, okay, between Jacob and Esau runs deep. Okay, people have been fooled because the devil, civil rights. You had civil rights movement, and now Jake can vote, Jake can sit where they want on the bus. And, he allowed you niggas to be part of his political system, to be judges, and it's the first black this, the first black that, the first black senator, the first black House representative, first black city councilman, and all these different things. And it made it seem as if the devil, okay, was changing. It seemed as if he didn't have this deep hatred for you that he had. Okay, he let us few you niggas, run a football and dunk a basketball, and allow you niggas to be in movies, and okay, and our people, it gave the illusion that this devil just didn't have this deep hatred, man. But that hatred has always been there, man. It's just more systemic than overt right now. When overt, is blatant, it's direct. Something systemic, it can be more covert. Okay, and we're gonna go into this video which the beloved Elder Brother Quiet from down here put together. But I want to get I'm gonna get to the video, you know, and then we'll come back and get some more precepts. So I want to play this. He put together a pretty good compilation, okay, of different videos. So let's get straight to it, and then we'll come back with some more precepts. All right. So the brother Chandler is on GMS dedication. I'll put the link in the video. Subscribe, be edified. Be informed. All right. So the brother Chandler is Esau, Edom, and we're gonna go into some other things as well. Okay. But let's play this.
To the eugenics movement. The same who had come to embrace a worldview that was essentially identical to the eugenics movement. The same individuals and corporations who had once made millions on the backs of slaves were now willing to spend millions to get rid of them. But that didn't mean that these guys were interested in being public crusaders for the eugenics movement. They were certainly willing to be the brains and the money behind it, but they would hire crusaders to do the dirty work. And the primary one they settled upon was a woman named Margaret Sanger. She was the founder of the American Birth Control League and the publisher of its newsletter, the Birth Control Review. On a practical level, the relationship between Sanger and these elitists was basically a marriage of convenience. In order to advance their common agendas, they needed a front man and she needed money. And the whole thing would be held together by this kind of bizarre obsession with race and class. The result was that the American Birth Control League became the driving force behind the American eugenics movement.
And so, as you can see, with these elites, they get particular front men, to be, the public spokesman for these different agendas. Okay, it's just the least that's financing, all right, these ideas, okay, and these certain projects, okay, to destroy Jake, even when it comes to, New World Order like these. You see Elon Musk and all these different guys, these are front men for the elites, okay, but even going back here with Margaret Sanger, okay, then you had the feminist movement, okay, with Gloria Steinem, Betty Friedan. Okay, these two Edomite women were they are sponsored by okay, these elite devils, man, okay, and all these different propagandas and all these different projects and agendas that they want to present, okay, and incorporate into society, man, okay. But the elites are behind all this. Amalek, okay, which we know, Amalek has the deepest hatred for us as a people, okay. So let's play this, and that's why the Lord had a deep hatred, all right, for all Edom. There was an emphasis on Amalek, okay.
Eugenics would no longer just be a philosophy. Sanger and others like her were going to put it into practice.
The worst thing that could have happened to Black life is Margaret Sanger. She studied under people like Nazis to say, how do we figure out a perfect race? She wanted to make sure that certain populations of people were controlled.
And she wrote in a letter that she didn't want word to get out that she wanted to exterminate the Negro population. She considered people of color and the disabled to be like human weeds that should be pulled out of the ground, the ones that were unclean, the ones that were unfit.
She went after African American leaders and pastors to pay them.
A Harlem Pastoral Alliance, each pastor received $500 from Margaret Sanger through W.E.B. Du Bois. For what? To allow this trash, this hoe, Margaret Sanger, to come into Black churches in Harlem to persuade Black women to abort their children. So the life of a Black child was only worth $500?
To market to their people to kill their offspring so that there would not be that many Blacks in this country.
Unfortunately, the roots of eugenics, it really has borne fruit. African American women, we are 3 times more likely to abort than other races. And we have abortion as the #1 cause of death in our community. And it's truly devastating.
Targeting minorities is systemic in the entire industry. We were told that we were to go into minority neighborhoods, low-income neighborhoods. We were to put up flyers about the abortion services to essentially lure these minority women into our facilities.
What has happened to African American communities as a result of Margaret Sanger's plan to interject abortion in a very vulnerable, poor community has unraveled our family life. Most people don't appreciate that by the 60s, Black family life was still relatively healthy. 78% of Black husbands were in their homes with their wives raising children. You fast forward after they interjected welfare state policies, and abortion, now we're looking at 75% of Black children born outside of marriage. The low educational rates, the high crime rates, the abortion rates, the welfare rates, the AIDS rates, everything ill is hitting this particular population simply because of Margaret Sanger's plan to annihilate this population, their families, and make sure that they did not have success in this country.
A think tank in the UK says too many kids are what's making the planet worse.
In many Black communities, for every child actually born, 3 others are aborted, more than double the rate among whites. Some say abortion is the #1 killer in the Black community.
African Americans here in this country are the only ethnic group in any place on the globe that's not replacing themselves. This is genocide.
Hillary Clinton received the Margaret Sanger Award. This is a woman who started an organization called Planned Parenthood, and that woman called Black people human weeds.
An organization whose founder believed in eugenics.
The goal, to rid the country of the feeble-minded, defectives.
States in the United States refusing to compensate victims who were forcibly sterilized because they were deemed unfit to reproduce.
If they could keep certain segments of the population from reproducing, that all the world's problems would disappear. And so
we have spent the past few weeks calling and emailing politicians in California, and the silence has been astonishing.
Welcome to this talk. It's called the Science Agenda.
Now you go into that guy, Mike Adams, he's going to go into, scientific, attacks, chemical attacks on Jake, which we get into those things. And what you see with the devil is nothing new. Okay. This whole thing of Planned Parenthood, presenting Jake as the weed in the garden, it goes back to scientific racism, Darwinism, all these different, elite, so-called elite thinkers amongst Esau, they would always deem, Jake less than a human, or Jake is worthy, of being eradicated. Okay. And these people are still in power, and, they gave, the nigger woman, government assistance, they gave, I said, let's start letting Jake, participate in particular things. And, our people, began to look at this devil as if he was something different. Okay. But there was always a systemic, plan. There was always systemic systems in place, to keep Jake destroyed. That's why Jake still has the worst foods where they at. Okay, you have something called a food that, where Jake doesn't have access like that to food. Okay, you have the poor, housing, the poor schools, the poor policing. Okay, money is not, poured into, areas where Jake is at. Okay. They give Jake, rap music to give Jake instructions to destroy themselves. Okay. The women are over sexualized to where, they just become worthless. Okay. No structure. All these things have happened systematically. Okay, and Esau Edom is at the forefront of these things. Okay, now that doesn't make Jake innocent, for continuing to participate. Okay, in the schemes, all right, of the devil. As Jake, continues to participate in their own destruction, because now all these things are being made known. All this information is out. Okay, so let's go from there. So I asked a few questions to the chat, and then we get into some precepts. So I went into the chat GPT. All right, now remember, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. This rivalry between good and evil. You know, it says, was Cain trying to eliminate the righteous lineage out the earth? It said that's a thoughtful question, and is one that delves into the deeper theological and symbolic meaning of the story of Cain and Abel. It said the Bible does not explicitly say that Cain was trying to eliminate the righteous lineage from the earth, but some interpretations suggest, all right, his act symbolically represents rebellion against the Most High, all right, an attempt to destroy righteousness, okay, because it's deeper than, civil rights. People think that, the transatlantic slave trade and civil rights movement, Jake being sprayed with water hose and dogs being put on them. Okay, the KKK, Jake think that's, the origin of this hatred between, all right, Jacob and Esau. No, it goes way back. Okay, even to the garden. All right, it says Cain and Abel were the first two sons of Adam and Eve. Okay, because you can trace, the lineage, okay, our lineage back to Adam, as Israelites. Let's say you're from the tribe of Reuben, where Reuben was the son of Jacob. Okay, Jacob was the son of Isaac. Isaac was the son of Abraham. Okay, and you go into Abraham's lineage, he came from the lineage of who? Noah. Okay, Noah, all right, it comes from the lineage of what? The sons of God, going all the way back to Adam. Okay, so this is a rivalry between two lineages that represent, all right, righteousness and wickedness. Okay, with the sons of God represent righteousness. Okay, and the sons of Esau, Edom, okay, represent the sons of the wicked one. Even going back to Cain. Okay, it says Cain and Abel were the first two sons of Adam and Eve. Abel's offering to the Most High was accepted. Cain's was not. Cain represents their rebellion, man. They had the rebellious spirit because he knew what to sacrifice. He did what he wanted to do. Out of jealousy and anger, Cain murdered Abel. And see, Esau can't get to the Most High. So what does he do? He destroys the people of the Most High. He has a deep hatred for the people of the Most High, man, because this devil, he's very adverse to righteousness, man, and anything that's symbolic to righteousness. Okay, and that's why he, either physically destroys our people or gets them to be lewd like him. Okay, that's how he gets off. Okay, it says God then cursed Cain, but also protected him from being killed by others. Why? Because the devil is reserved. The Lord reserved the devil for this time when the Lord's going to show great power. Okay, when He judges this man. Okay, it says Abel is often seen as the first righteous man. Okay, Cain becomes a symbol of evil, rebellion. Okay, or the flesh. All right, 1 John 3:12 says his killing of Abel is the scene of seen as symbolic, all right, as symbolic of wickedness trying to destroy righteousness. Okay, and this is what we're seeing playing out now, just in the form of eugenics. Okay, drill culture. Okay, abortions. You know, the food, the drugs. The crack. It's the same thing. Okay, just in a different time. It says after Abel's death, Seth is born, and it's through Seth's line that Noah, all right, it's through Seth's line that Noah, Abraham, and ultimately Yahushua descended. Some scholars view this as the Most High preserving the righteous seed, even though Cain killed Abel. So Cain was trying to eradicate that righteous seed. Okay. You see? So let's get a few precepts. Okay. Because even us in our lower state, because you look at when Jake, first got out of hardcore bondage over here, and Jake began to build communities, have their own, the men were skilled, okay, the families were intact and order, okay, and there was a threat, Esau just hates to see Jake at peace, man, in any type of peace and any type of structure, because Jake is a symbol of righteousness, man, and this devil, all right, is a symbol of wickedness, man. All right, so we're gonna go back to that, but let's get this here in the book of get this in the book of Sirach. All right, chapter Sirach 33. Let's start about 12, 14. All right, this is Sirach chapter 12 and verse 10. It's like the Sirach chapter 33 and verse 10. And it says, and all men are from the ground, and Adam was created of the earth. And much knowledge the Lord have divided them and made their ways diverse. So everyone, descends back to Adam. Okay? Because the only survivors of the flood were men that came through the lineage of Adam. Okay? When you go into Noah, he descended from Adam, and his three sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Okay? Well, it lets you know that the only survivors of the flood were descendants of Adam, okay, through Noah, okay? And then you have the nations that we have today. You see, verse 12 says, some of them have he blessed and exalted, and some of them have he sanctified and set near himself, which is Jacob. But some of them have he cursed and brought low and turned them out of their places, where this is Esau, Edom. Okay, as the clay is in the potter's hand to fashion it at his pleasure, so man is in the hand of him that made him to render to them as liking him best. So the Lord fashioned Jacob to be a particular way. He fashioned Esau to be a particular way. Okay, now 2/3 of our people are turned out because the scriptures say, Proverbs 12 and 26, how the righteous is more excellent than his neighbor, but the ways of the wicked seduceth him. Jake has been seduced into being like unto him, because Esau, he can't destroy all of Israel. Another tactic that he uses is to turn Jake out. Okay. You see, it happened during the Hellenization period, and it happened during this Westernization period. You see? So Esau, he's fashioned a particular way, and see, Jake makes a big mistake in thinking that this devil is somehow going to change. They think that this devil has some type of righteousness in him. No, he's not. He's not fashioned like that. He's not fashioned to care, all right, about your situation. He's not fashioned to, all right, give you a fair deal, give you a fair shake in his kingdom. He's not fashioned to do that. Okay, he wasn't made like that. All right. This is verse, and see, we understand that this devil just needs to be judged, removed from power, and eventually he needs to be eradicated. Because here it is, another thing too. This devil, here it is, he's the problem of the earth, but he has flipped the narrative to make Jake to seem like they're the problem of the earth. All right, now niggas are a problem, but niggas are a creation of Esau, Edom. Esau has created these niggas to be a problem, so he can have a scapegoat. It says, verse 15, so look upon all the works of the Most High, and there are two and two, one against another. Okay? You see that verse, read verse 14. This is the point I think I skipped. It says, good is set against evil, and life against death. So is the godly against the sinner, and the sinner against the godly. And this is the rivalry, the ongoing rivalry between Jacob and Esau. Okay, and it's not in the devil to do right. Okay, he's the sinner, the ungodly. He's the man of sin. Okay, and the culture that he gave to Jake is what? A sin culture. Nigga culture is a sin culture. Okay, because he wants Jake to be defiled like unto him. Okay, so he can have, he can accuse Jake. The scripture talk about the accuser of our brethren. You see, so Esau, when it comes to Jake, either he wants to turn you out or just to eradicate you, man. Okay, so going back, when you go into the more of the history, all right. So they was dealing with Cain, but then you go here, all right. Um, then Haman want to eliminate the Jews completely. That's what I asked the chat. And it says, yes, Haman absolutely, with this Amalekite, wanted to eliminate the Jews completely. This is clearly stated in the book of Esther. Okay. It says, when Mordecai Jew refused to bow to Haman, Haman's reaction went far beyond personal revenge. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. And you best believe he's pissed because there's a remnant, especially Israelite men, that's not bowing down to his enchantments anymore. Okay, that's not giving this nigga the reverence, all right, that he wants. Okay, calling this devil out, man. You see, so this devil is enraged at this time. Okay, and that's why he's gearing up this persecution, man. It said, yet having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing. He scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead, Haman looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. Then Haman said to Xerxes, all right, this is Esther 3:8 through 9. It says, there is a certain people dispersed among the people who do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it please the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them. And that's when Haman, offered to invest in that destruction. And he was speaking to King, Xerxes at the time. Okay, it said the decree was intended to wipe out all Jews in the Persian Empire, which spanned from India to Ethiopia, a massive and far-reaching genocide. Okay, so when we see these things today, remember this rivalry goes way back, and this is Esau. He was always attempted. Okay, he was always attempting to eradicate Jake, man. Okay, it says Haman's intent is seen as an archetype. All right, was it anti-Semitism? Well, also it's just that rivalry between good and evil. Okay, they use that word, because they us now, and they try to incorporate, them always being persecuted to us. That was always being persecuted by these nations, man. Okay, so they, hijack that narrative. Okay, it says a deep-rooted irrational hatred of Israelite people that recurs throughout history. All right, it says Israelite tradition often connects Haman with Amalek. All right, because Haman was a descendant of Agag, which was what the king of Amalek. Okay, it says the ancient enemy of Israel, whom the Most High declared would be at war with Israel from generation to generation. Exodus 17-16. All right, the Lord declared that He would have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Okay, so when you see these devils, they come up with all these systems to destroy Jake. That's them at war with the Most High, man. I say we're at the time where the Most High is getting ready to respond. He has responded with the prophets. It's a verbal response. Okay, and it's back and forth, between good and evil, and then there's going to be a physical response with Yahushua. Okay, it says in fact Haman is called an Agagite, possibly linking him to King Agag of the Amalekites, whom Saul destroyed, who failed to destroy. This adds to the theological dimension. Haman is seen not just as a political enemy, but a spiritual descendant of Israel's oldest enemies. Okay, you see. So this devil, all right, he's not new to this, man. Okay, even when you go into Antiochus, it said that Antiochus Epiphanes, all right, want to destroy the Jews in his time. It said, yes, Antiochus Epiphanes did not seek to physically annihilate the Israelite people as Haman did, but he did attempt to destroy Judaism by eradicating the Israelite religion, culture, and identity through forced Hellenization. Okay, and Esau either wants to eradicate you, okay, physically or destroy you spiritually, man. Okay, it says a Seleucid king who was in Antiochus Epiphanes. It says a Seleucid king who ruled part of the Greek Empire after Alexander the Great, known for his brutal suppression of Israelite religious practices, called himself Epiphanes, which means God manifest, but Jews mockingly call him Epimanes, which is madman. All right, it says according to First and Second Maccabees, okay, uh, he outlawed religious, all right, Israelite religious practices, circumcision, Sabbath observance, Torah reading, desecrated the temple, sacrificed a pig, all right, on the altar, set up an idol, all right, or altar to Zeus in the temple, okay, forced Jews to adopt Greek um, religion and culture, mandatory participating in pagan festivals, persecution of those who resisted, tortured and killed Jews who remained faithful to the covenant. See Maccabees, Second Maccabees 6 and 7. Okay, so in this devil in his power, he always finds his way to come, all right, and do what, man? Okay, be a terror to Jake. Okay, you see, that's why you Israelites, you're so against. And this is the nigga that the Israelites want to save. Israelites that know that they're Israelites, they want to save Esau. Okay, this is the race of people, the only race of people that our people are concerned about when we speak about salvation only being for Israel. This is the people that our people are obsessed with, man. Okay, so even when you go here, it says, was Herod the Great trying to keep Israel in captivity by trying to kill the Messiah? So I asked him that. All right. And it says, great question. It says, Herod the Great was not explicitly trying to keep Israel in captivity, but his attempt to kill the Messiah was driven by his desire to protect his political power. And from a theological view, it aligned with the ongoing resistance to the Most High redemption plan for Israel. Okay. And it says in the world, but it's only for Israel. All right. Some chat through in there. All right. Because there was a redeemer promise, all right, to come to Israel. Okay. When you go into it, because one of the matter of fact, we'll get it. Let's read this. It says Herod was appointed king of Judea by the Romans, though he was ethnically Idumean, Edomite. He practiced Judaism and ruled over a majority Israelite population. He was political, savvy, paranoid, and brutal, killing even his own sons and wife, which he had an Israelite wife. His wife was an Israelite, but he killed her and the children he had by her. All right, when he feared plots against him. Okay, it says when the Magi came looking for the king of the Jews, Herod panicked. Okay, it says this is Matthew 2 and 3. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. That's all them sellout niggas that was with, all right, Herod at the time. All right, because that nigga know he was a phony. All right, he wasn't the real king, all right, of Israel, just like today. Okay, these small hats, claiming to be us. Okay, it's the same thing, man. We're just seeing it playing out in a newer time. All right, and just as Herod panicked, at the birth of Yahushua, well, guess what? The spirit of Yahushua has been reborn in the earth amongst his men. And best believe these devils are panicking, man. Okay, trying to figure out, all right, how to move. It says Herod gave orders to kill the boys in Bethlehem, okay, in his vicinity, who were 2 years old and under. This is known as the massacre, okay, of the innocents. Okay, And it says, let me go here. Yep. It says political motivation. Herod saw a rival king, including the prophesied Messiah, as a threat to his throne. Just like Esau, he looks at Yahushua. Okay, and he knows Yahushua is coming to take his throne. Okay, that's why Yahushua coming back as what? The King of Kings. You see, it said he acted out of self-preservation, and it says not theological intent. It said theological implications. It says from a biblical theological lens, his action fits into a pattern of satanic opposition to the Most High's redemptive plan. Pharaoh tried to destroy Israel male babies in Exodus the first chapter. Haman tried to exterminate the Jews. Herod tried to kill the Messiah. Okay, and Satan tried to tempt the Yahweh and ladder into Judas to betray him. These spiritual attacks clothed in political actions. Okay, so we have to understand these attacks on Jake. This is spiritual, man. That's why. Let's get to some precepts now. Okay, let's go here. Okay, then we have to understand. See, Jake doesn't understand, the spiritual implications that's at play. All right, let's get a few. So like, all right, Ephesians 6 and 10. It said, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of the Most High, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places, man. Okay? And the spiritual wickedness, all right, that's in high places is very demonic, man. Esau, Edom on the left hand side, he's tapped in, all right, to something very demonic and satanic. Okay, and he has, seduced Jake into the dark side. You know, he rewards Jake, for wickedness, man. All right, and now Jake is so enchanted that they do Esau's bidding by deleting themselves, man. Because why? They're under an enchantment, okay, of self-destruction. Okay, Jake doesn't understand that they're in the middle of spiritual warfare. So Jake goes out there with no covering, no shield in the spirit. All right, and is eradicated. The nigga woman. All right, she goes out there, thinks she got it, and is eradicated, becomes destructive to herself, her children, her environment. You see, because they don't understand the spiritual warfare that's at play, man. This is a rivalry between good and evil, man. Okay, and Esau, our people have been, look at Esau lightly. They admire this nigga. They admire, all right, their own destruction, man. Okay, because this man was created to be against us as a people, man. This is why this man he's fashioned to be that way. Okay, let's go here. The book of Amos. You see, and Jake think that anger, the anger from the slave boats has, waned. Like he's not that type of Edomite anymore. Like you might catch hell getting a loan, for a business, but he's not that wicked Edomite that hang you from a tree. He's not that bad anymore. Okay. And Jake finna find out the hard way, man, as they gearing up, okay, to come at Jake hard. Okay. Amos 1:11 said, thus said the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4 I would not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever, man. So this man has a perpetual hatred, man. Okay, and the more you get to the top of Esau's empire, see these Edomites, that we see on the day to day, they have a hatred for us, and you know, you can feel the animosity, okay, off these devils. You see, but the further you get up to the top in the ranks, when you go into, the politics and these big companies and CEOs, and it's the hatred is different. It's a whole different type of hatred that these devils got, man. And these are people that control the policies, the systems, the medical, the food, the education, the entertainment, the music. Okay, where they do mass damage on Jake, man. Okay, so what I say, well, Jake is there's nothing more destructive to an Israelite than another Israelite, man, under the enchantments of Esau Edom. Okay, and that's just a token of the hatred that this man has for Jacob, and he has no pity. Okay, this nigga is not meant to have any pity, man. Okay, and you go here to the book of Joel, because it mentioned how ancient Egypt, they was killing all the male children. Okay, and then you go here to Joel 3:19. It says, "In Egypt shall be a desolation." Okay, because Esau comes in the spirit of all these anti-Messiah, okay, empires, man, which was Egypt, okay, Rome, Babylon mainly, man. Okay, Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, it says, "And Edom shall be a desolate wilderness," which is going to be from the nukes and the chariots, man, "for violence against the children of Judah, because they have shed innocent blood in their land." Okay, so the Lord is going to pay back, this devil, for his perpetual hatred on the tribes, man. Okay, and especially since there's a remnant, that has repented within this man's kingdom. Okay, because as we want to, serve Yahweh by Shema Shai and righteousness, man, this devil, he's completely against it, and he's going to try to stop that, man. Okay, that's why you go here to Revelation, okay, 12 and 17. All right, this is Revelation 12 and 17, and that dragon. Remember, we read that in Genesis 3 and 16, how there will be enmity between the serpent and the woman, which the woman represents Israel. So now this serpent is a dragon, okay, that runs the earth, man. It says, "And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed," okay, the remnant of Israel, which keep the commandments of the Most High and have the testimony of Yahweh Shah Hamashiach, man. Okay, so this devil is gearing up. You best believe he wants to eradicate all believers of Yahweh Shah. Because Esau, if he can't turn you out, he wants to eradicate you, man. Okay, and this is why our faith has to be, in the protection of Yahweh by Shema Shai. Okay, and we can go there. So we can end it with that. Let's go to Psalms. Let's see, 124. Okay, understanding the circumstances we in. Okay. All right, Psalms 124 and 1. It says, "If it had not been for the Lord, Yahweh Bashim al Shah, who was on our side, now may Israel say, if it had not been for the Lord who was on our side when men rose up against us, then they had swallowed us up quick with their wrath, when their wrath was kindled against us. Then the waters had overwhelmed us, the stream had gone over our soul, then the proud waters had gone over our soul." Okay, so if it wasn't for the Lord who was with us, all right, when men's anger, okay, when their wrath was kindled against us, and you best believe these devils pissed, okay, that we turn back to righteousness, man. Okay, that we're not operating under his enchantments. Okay, so when men rose up against us, all right, and it says the waters, the proud waters, okay, because the devil he's been trying to overwhelm us, man. Okay, you have to understand where we at in prophecy. You see, it said, "Blessed be the Lord, Yahweh Bashem al Shah, who have not given us as a prey to their teeth," which is their devices, man. Okay, and the main device gonna be their sea hip. Okay, it says, "Our soul is escaped as a bird out of the snare or the system of the fowlers, Esau Edom." Okay, the snare is broken. This whole system is gonna be destroyed. Okay, this age is gonna be destroyed, and we are escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord Yahweh Bashem al Shah, who made heaven and earth. Okay, who made heaven and earth, man. So Yahweh Shema Shai is going to be our help in this time, man, because we still have an enemy, okay, that's plotting and scheming. And for us, that have the testimony of Yahweh Shai, okay, this devil's going to put emphasis on that. All right. So that's the point. Just wanted to get into that, Lord will, you brothers. All right. And you sisters edified, to the next time. I say Shalom. Kwam Yashala. Bob soon. Shalom.